You're welcome back. We'll take you shortly to Kumo, but let's start off with the energy sector. 29 civil society organizations are piling pressure on President Akufo-Addo to sack GNPC board chairperson Freddie Blay and CEO Akufo-Addo from office. This follows revelations that Ghana's interest in some of its oil fields have been offered to a South African company, Petroleum Oil and Gas Corporation, Petro SA. The GNPC board chairperson is said to have written to Petro SA offering it an equal split in the interest held by GNPC, a subsidiary of Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited. Dr. Prempeh insists that this move is not in the interest of the country, as the nation will lose revenue. He is therefore asking Mr. Blake to withdraw the offer immediately. Let's get more from Joseph Akablay, who's been following this story for us. He's joining us after a press briefing by a representative of some of these 29 civil society organizations that we're talking about. But beyond the issues of the deal itself, why are they asking, first of all, for the dismissal of Freddie Blay?
I mean, it stems from what they have discovered by the way of the letter that was written by the energy minister to Freddie Blay, the board chairman of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation. Now, that particular letter makes reference to an earlier October 2022 letter that was written by the energy minister to Mr. Freddie Blay. And that letter states here that the corporation should cease any further negotiations with Petro SA on matters of Petro SA's intended preemption of the Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited stakes. It again states that the stakes were acquired by the government of Ghana with state funds. The government of Ghana has informed the South African government through the minister responsible for natural resources and energy in a bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the African Energy Week 2022 in Cape Town that Ghana would not approve any preemption of the Jubilee Oil Holdings stakes. And so subsequent to the meeting, again, the Minister of Minerals and the Energy in South Africa on the above subject has also been informed of this particular development. The conclusion of this letter written by the Energy Minister is quite interesting. It says, "It is therefore scandalous that in spite of these directives, you have led the GNPC to offer parts of the government-acquired Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited interest in the Deepwater Tunnel reserved to Petro SA. I direct that you cease and desist from any further floating of the directives forthwith and withdraw the offer made to Petro SA." In your letter.
Do we know if the board chair has made any public comments or perhaps has justified what may be happening in this latest deal that we're hearing of?
We have not seen a formal public comment on this matter. We have reached out. We are told that in terms of what they know about this particular transaction, they are saying that this is not an entirely accurate reflection of the state of affairs. But we'll still try and engage them to get an interview on this.
How about the civil society organizations? The deal itself, the claim that it's not in the interest of the country. What more arguments are they making to support this?
So they make the point that in terms of the estimated revenue from these fields in issue just 1 year, they said the nation got $290 million from it. And so the argument is that if Ghana sees 50% of its interest, it will mean that what it will be obtaining from these fields will be less than the $290 million. And so Abdul Karim Mohammed, who addressed the news conference on behalf of the civil society organizations, is making a point that as far as they are concerned, for Freddie Blay making that offer, he should be sacked. We can watch him make that point.
Even though AKE has sold their interest in Ghana, they are scheming to stay on the Pecan development through surrogates and Ghanaian collaborators across segments of our society to amass ridiculous benefits from the Pecan field development. AKE Energy purchased an FPSO for $35 million. In their plan of development submitted to the government, AKE's previous owners intended to build Ghana $1.7 billion for the FPSO. We admit that the Energy Ministry has raised a preliminary objection to the cost of the FPSO, but there is no proposal on how much the ministry considers fair value for the FPSO. 2. Originally, a tanker called ST Polar Alaska, manufactured 36 years ago, was converted into an FPSO 14 years ago. Now, typically, FPSOs have an average payback period of 5 to 7 years, varying based on size and configuration. The lease period for rented option is commonly 10 years. Technocrats have expressed concern about the FPSO's age and have recommended caution, but there is political pressure to proceed with the deal. We are monitoring this keenly and demand transparency on the judgment of the ministry before the approval is granted. We demand the immediate removal of GNPC CEO Opoku-Addo and the board chairman Freddie W. Blay from their respective positions, as they have become a threat to Ghana's interest in the petroleum sector. 6. Additionally, we demand the immediate transfer of JOHL and all its assets from Cayman Island and other jurisdictions to GNPC. 7. We demand immediate disclosure of the Ake plan of development from the Petroleum Commission and the government. To conclude, we firmly believe that a country micromanaged by the IMF cannot be seen to engage in fiscal recklessness that undermines its recovery. In these difficult times, the nation needs prudent management of its resources to derive the fullest benefits and bring relief to the suffering masses. Furthermore, we encourage citizens to demand accountability on the petroleum sector to ensure that our natural resources benefit all citizens of the nation.
Well, so that's the demand of the civil society organizations, but it's bringing up a conversation also about another petroleum company involved in this whole chain. What's the breakdown to this?
So it has to do with Aker Energy. And in terms of this particular involvement, I think if we go a step back a bit, you recall that about 2 years ago, Aker Energy were in the news. It just had to do with the fact that there were some oil fields that Aker Energy was operating on. And they decided that they were going out of the country. So they were going to sell those oil fields, their interest in those oil fields, back to government. So they wanted to sell it for $1.6 billion. Parliament, GNPC went to Parliament, asking Parliament for authorization to go in to get a loan to purchase it. Now, the civil society organizations took the view that, in fact, Parliament eventually gave the GNPC the authorization to go ahead, but give authorization for $1.1 billion. Now, GNPC and the CSOs, for that matter, take the view that the $1.1 billion is inflated because they don't think that the fields are worth the amount of $1.1 billion. And so we are learning today from the CSOs again that following the concerns that were raised by the civil society organizations about the fact that the oil fields, the price was inflated, Aker Energy has actually pulled out and rather has given government the opportunity to acquire it for $1. And in the event that the fields prove to be profitable, then the state will pay them $200 million.
In how many years?
It depends on how, when the production is able to take place. Now, they have some assets here, which includes an FPSO, the floating petroleum system that is used to drill the oil. Now, that is the asset that you heard Mr. Mohammed make reference to. Once they've pulled out, they want to sell that asset to Ghana. And we are told that, according to the CSOs, the assets, the FPSO was acquired by Aker Energy for $35 million, but they want to sell it to Ghana for $1.7 billion, which this time around, they also hold a view that this is bloated as well. Interestingly, the CSOs claim that the Energy Ministry has actually written to Aker Energy to object to it, to say that the price is too high. And so the CSOs are saying that yes, they are happy that the minister has objected to
so let's get an understanding to this. The position of the minister, and what point is this coming through? The objection that we're learning from Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, and why is he making that objection when indeed the GNPC has the power to go into such a negotiation?
Because the minister holds the view that, as far as he's concerned, once those fields became available, state funds were used to acquire the fields. Now, he makes the point that the fields are valuable, and so far, from what the CSOs tell us, a single year, the nation made $290 million. And government has taken the decision that they are not going to relinquish those fields. And so he thinks that it should not be offered to Petro SA because the larger public interest will be better served, i.e., on our own managing those fields, we can get a lot more money than if we decide to relinquish some of it to a different partner, which is Petro SA in this particular instance. So that is how come he holds the view that it is not in our interest that it should be offered. And mind you, once Petro SA on their own as partners in the space have already made a request, which will have to be approved by GNPC and government for that matter. And so that is how come he's saying that the government policy, which has been communicated to the South African Ministry of Petroleum, is the fact that government is not going to approve for such a takeover to take place.
What would that be in terms of impact on this oil field? Because obviously someone is pulling out, we're no longer interested, as Akere is indicating. But you still have Petro SA who says, we're interested in this, we'll take over. What then happens to the field? Who's going to be in possession of this field?
I mean, so far, the ownership structure, including the government's interest and everything, has not been tampered with so far. It's not been touched since it got pulled out and the new owners took over. Everything has been run, and the state is making money, it's exploring the field and making money from it. And so the impact for now, nothing negative is happening as we speak now. But what it will only mean is that in the event that they pull out of it or we decide to relinquish to Petro SA, it would only mean that what we'll be earning will go down. But it could also additionally mean that there will be more investment in the space because we'll have another partner coming on board. And so if we are supposed to raise capital to undertake exploration, it will not just be the Jubilee Oil Holdings Company Limited putting its value.
But although interest may be coming down if Petro SA takes over, that will be because we're no longer making any significant investment in terms of exploration. This company will do so and give us our stakes. That's the explanation to this?
It depends on how far we go by way of exploration. But we are told that in a single year, the nation was able to make $290 million from that particular field. And so as far as the CSOs are concerned, it's a valuable field. They do not think that it's a field that we have any issues with, for which reason we should decide to allow Petro SA exercise their preemptive rights to acquire.
What's likely to be the next steps for this 29 civil society organizations?
I mean, even before that, we know that Parliament has taken a keen interest in this particular matter. There is a statement that is signed by the ranking member on the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament, John Jinapo, a statement that he signed here. Let me quickly run you through that statement. It says, the minority in Parliament has sadly uncovered a clandestine and surreptitious attempt by the GNPC and its board chairman to sell the 7% shares acquired by the Republic of Ghana from Anadarko West Cape 3 Points Company, that is Anadarko, to Petroleum Oil and Gas Corporation of South Africa, Petro SA. As usual, we have cited correspondence between the GNPC and Petro SA revealing a covert attempt by the GNPC to offload the said shares, which we consider as illegal and unconscionable. We have equally taken note of the usual desperate attempts by the Minister of Finance to commit Ghana yet again by borrowing huge sums of money from Letasco, a private company, on the back of the Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited by forward selling the Republic of Ghana's crude oil expected from the Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited. For a government that has overborrowed its way into a state of bankruptcy, the least this government can do will be to refrain from such reckless borrowing, especially against future oil receipts. This action is highly reprehensible, and all steps must be taken to pull the brakes on this government from the insatiable desire to keep borrowing with the least opportunity. This act, if not checked, will further exacerbate the already precarious debt levels Ghana has currently found itself in. Enough of the wastage, and is signed by John Abdullahi Jinapo MP and ranking member on the Mines and Energy Committee.
Grateful. We'll be following these matters.